This is in the documentary competition. It's Winnie.
Winnie, about Winnie Mandela, and we have the director with us, Pascal Lamche.
Yes.
She's just going to let you go with that.
That was close enough, I
was
guess.
good.
Now, a controversial figure, and I see. I was looking at some information on you. You made a film about Nelson Mandela.
I did, yeah.
So this is the bookend, the companion piece about his wife, who was at one time the hero of South Africa. While he was in prison, she kept the fires alive and kept it, and then things went horribly wrong.
Things went horribly wrong, although that is that's the narrative that everybody knows. And I think what interested me, and particularly even since I'd made the film about Nelson, which was a film about how he was sent to jail for a lifetime for 27 years, her story was always seemed to me to be more interesting because she'd been vilified, demonized, and branded a murderer. And there was a big sort of gap between the love for her that exists in South Africa.
Does it still?
And still now, absolutely, in every, not only in the townships, but I suppose particularly amongst the black population, it's absolutely true. And she's revered as a very radical figure, and someone who's maintained a very coherent stance as a radical critiquer of South Africa and this notion that this great dream was realized, when in fact on the ground most people know that it really wasn't realized.
Well, okay, there's a lot to talk about there in that sentence you just did. So Nelson Mandela goes to prison presumably for life. He did eventually get out. She is his long-suffering wife who stokes the fires and keeps it going, and is eventually, in some respects, responsible for his release from prison.
Absolutely.
They divorce because it is said he finds out that she had a relationship with someone while he was in prison. Who could blame her?
27 years.
He's in prison for 27 years.
Well, or life, as far as she knows. He's never getting out.
And so they divorce, and he's angry, and they divorce. Then things go very wrong for her. She's accused of murder, kidnapping, all kinds of horrible crimes. Are these things not true?
These things are not true. If the conclusion you're trying to reach is that she was guilty of murder, kidnapping, etc., etc. I mean, she went to trial. She was drawn in, and I think what the film shows is that she was drawn into a trial as a consequence and after a trip to America where she and Nelson had a ticker-tape parade, which is, of course, a great honor. And she was asked onto a show, the Phil Donahue show. And on that show, instead of behaving herself, she said, I'm going to keep a very close watch on the negotiations that are happening now for this transition to democracy in South Africa. And if I see that they're not going the way they should be going, and that the old regime carries on in control, then I'm going to be the first to go back into the bush, take up arms, and fight the apartheid government. Now, it's a strange coincidence that on her return to South Africa, suddenly she's drawn into a trial where retrospectively she's now suddenly accused of being complicit in a trial that had taken place 2 years before, in which a man who it was subsequently proved was in the pay of the apartheid government and had killed a boy who it was then proven had known that he was working for the police forces, for the apartheid forces. And he went to jail for life for that crime. But she was drawn into that trial. Do you see what I mean? So it was a complicated story, and it seemed to be a story of revenge.
Sounds like it the way you describe it.
Was Nelson himself complicit in perhaps charges against her?
No, he wasn't. He defended his wife very solidly for a very long time. And that in the film you discover, because I interview a number of people who were responsible who were in the secret services, etc., and who were responsible for psychological warfare, dirty tricks, all sorts of things, and who then realized that, well, if they couldn't get her in this way or in another way, the easiest way to take down a woman actually is to talk about her private life. So that's where this story was leaked, or this letter that she'd written to a man she was in love with was leaked to the press. And of course, the intelligence services had known about this for a long time, and they just sat on it until it was useful for them to leak it to the press.
It's called Winnie, and the movie is directed by this woman, Pascal Lamche.
Pascal Lamche.
Lamche. And it's so the portrait of Winnie Mandela, because I'd kind of gotten the idea that she was not a nice person after all of this, but is not so accurate. And then the other thing you said I thought was interesting, that this new, now there was this new and wonderful regime in South Africa, and I think you sort of alluded to the fact that that's not necessarily true either.
Well, I mean, it was a wonderful regime, and in that finally democracy had come to South Africa after a long period of a white supremacist system that brutally oppressed the black majority. So yes, fantastic, without question. The problem is now, more than 20 years later, what has it actually delivered to that black majority population? Very little. And if anything, it's business as usual, and a very small minority of a black elite who've made an enormous amount of money. And the majority of the people, have trouble just being housed, finding any kind of job, for their kids to be educated. Primary health care is in a terrible state. I mean, there are a lot of serious problems, and the youth of South Africa now, black and white, this new generation, are out in the streets protesting almost daily, led essentially by the student movement, to say, hold on, what happened in the 90s maybe was not this great miracle revolution that our parents told us.
Are there black oppressors almost now, in that there were white oppressors? It's just opportunists. Yes. I mean, it's opportunists.
Black oppressors. I think it's tricky to know. I mean, there are a few now billionaire black leaders who are, for example, directors of mining companies who, for example, were responsible for shooting down 34 miners, killing them in their because they attempted to set up an independent trade union because they weren't earning enough to live on. So in that way, yes, there are figures who were formerly in the liberation movement who've now become the new directors of oppressive situations.
And what's Winnie Mandela doing?
She's still in Parliament, and she's just turned 80, and she's still the voice of people who don't yet feel that sufficient. That a new life has been delivered to the people of South Africa, generally, black and white.
Will it change?
I hope so. I mean, history keeps evolving. I have enormous optimism for the capacity of people to organize for their own, to better their own lives. And yes, I hope it will. And I think people are organized and vociferous. And that's a good thing.
Thanks for being with us.
It's a great pleasure.
The movie is called Winnie, and there are still more chances to see it?
Absolutely. Several more chances, but
I don't have it in front of me.
I will give it to you right now.
Okay.
Maybe you can.
Here's our card right here. Oh, here we go.
Those are all the
these are the
stills.
screenings
so we had a
right here.
Yesterday, the premiere, and
did it go
today.
well?
It went fantastically well, and it was the first outing. I just finished the film 8 days ago, actually. So it was very exciting.
So on the, let's see, what's today, the 23rd? Yes, we've had the screening today. Oh, yeah, then tomorrow, or on the 25th, at the Rose Wagner in Salt Lake. And then Holiday Village Cinema on the 26th, on the 27th at Sundance Mountain Resort, and then back at the Holiday Village Cinema on the 28th. So many chances to see it, and you can just look it up online. It's called Winnie. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.